Matthew Heines. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran of the 82nd Airborne. I took the oath, and I'm here to defend my state.
All right, so Rich, with your law enforcement experience and perspective, we're talking about what happened to George Floyd. And we're going to get into kind of the conspiracy behind it, the circumstances behind his death. And this is post my going off about how they are honoring this guy by replicating how he was killed. So the first thing that I would like to ask you is, from a law enforcement perspective, what's your take on that arrest and how he was murdered?
Well, from my understanding of the whole thing is that Chavez in the group that encountered him later. So anyways, I'll just start here. I looked at the video. I've seen a bunch of different videos from different angles and stuff. There's a lot of question into this thing. A lot of skepticism, I would say now, even more so in this one than any of the other ones that we've seen over the years. For a lot of different reasons. I can tell you that from a tactical and a law enforcement perspective, I don't see anything in that video that was standard police procedure from any part of it whatsoever. I don't even know what they were doing. It looked like a hit job to me from some organized crime.
Well, can I just jump in here? Because I might post this on my Deceptions of the Ages channel, but I follow this stuff. I follow it for my campaign. I follow it for another one of my YouTube channels. And so it doesn't really have anything to do with Bigfoot, but it does have to do with the government conspiracy. And this is one of the biggest ones I've seen. So when I investigated it, there is Nuevo Rodeo, which is the restaurant. The restaurant is owned by a guy who was convicted of bribing an official back in 2001. And he got out of prison after his sentence, but he got out because he was going to be an informant, I'm sure. So Nuevo Rodeo, the restaurant that was involved in this supposed money laundering scheme, this is the one where this whatever his name is and Floyd worked at.
Chavez.
Or
Chavez, whatever you call him.
Yeah. So they worked at this place, and according to what happened, this guy tried to pass a $20 fake bill. They called the cops. 2 cops came down, and he was sitting in the driver's seat of the car, and they started talking to him. He didn't want to get out, but finally he did, and they handcuffed him. Then they said, Chauvin is his name. They said, this guy's going to come and pick you up, and the guy went crazy. The guy said, no, he's not coming. When he was with these other cops, he was fine with that, but he freaked out when this other guy came. Because he knew, I know what's going to happen because I did something they're going to kill me for. And so then, and I'm going to let you comment in a minute, but for me, to have a guy in public execute somebody like that, look at 9/11.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a public horror, psychological psyop that it's going to freak people out, and it's going to get people to react in a certain way.
Well, I tell you what.
So you tell me, what do you think will happen?
You know, I really like this word, and I use it a lot, but it really looks like a criminal conspiracy to me. I don't know. I mean, it looks like that we have probably some sort of government that's engaged in this thing to push some sort of an agenda to get people to rise up and to cause a race war to happen. Look at now, California. We've had 2 young black men hanging from trees, and down in California, and at first, one of them, the cop said that it was looked like a suicide, but then the family challenged, and it clearly looked like homicide. So what you have, it looks like to me in this scenario, somebody is taking black people, hanging them in trees to try to incite more violence, to try to get this to fucking catch on. Because guess what? You got South Central Los Angeles and all these gang members on the California coast. You get these people pissed off and ready to start driving around wasting white people in rich neighborhoods, you really can get something going then. Right? I think that's what we got going on here. I mean, you have to look at the big picture from a tactical perspective, and you got to look at each one of these events and what they signify. And you think some black person now is going to go hang himself in a tree? Probably not, because he's going to be thinking about what it's going to look like. And he's probably not, but I guarantee you that somebody who wants to agitate and push an agenda is going to go out and lynch some black people right now for an agenda and go hang them in trees and then say, oh, look, some white supremacists did this.
Yep.
Oh, look. And then you're going to infuriate this huge population of gang members.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Was any of those guys Jesse Smollett that was hanging?
No, but
I know that's not funny.
No.
But you know, he could have been taking that.
Well, Smollett's
to the
in big
to
trouble.
whole
The
extreme.
Smollett thing leads to a lot of different things. They're going to find out his connections and what, why he did what he did, and how that was all set up and paid for,
Yeah.
and who influenced prosecutors in that. And I think you're going to see that goes back to some very high levels in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Very clear where it goes. Phone records are going to end up being released on that, and a bunch of other stuff. And I think you're going to see some indictments come from that of elected officials, probably.
Well, okay, so yeah, so from the law enforcement perspective of doing an arrest, would you ever put your knee on somebody's throat?
I'll tell you, in fact, that I was a cop for 15 years, and I started my law enforcement career in like 1998. And I can tell you, back in 1998, that we were already being trained to not do any type of constriction to the neck. No knees to neck, no nothing. It was against policy back then. So I don't even know what it's about now and why it's coming up and why it's happening, because at least in every place I ever worked for the last 20 years of exposure, that has been something you don't do. And I started working out for the Department of Defense and was trained by the Department of the Navy. And we went through military-style riot training and stuff, and we did not put pressure on the neck even there. So I don't know where all this shit's coming from, or why there's oh, you got to ban neck restraints and all this stuff now, and choking. We never did that shit.
Yeah.
That was never the way you did it. I see it on TV now, but I don't know why it's happening, because it was never, you were never supposed to do it anyhow. That's what my take is. So that's another strange thing that I've noticed out of this, of how come something we've never did now is saying, oh, you used to do this, and they're giving all these examples, because we never did that stuff.
Yeah,
And
so-
I'll tell you the truth about cops, I don't even like them. So that's straight up.
Yeah. Well, I don't, for me, it's not that I don't like cops, it's that they have the power of really life and death over you. I mean,
Well, the problem is most of them don't even realize.
And one of the things that I'd like to share with people that grew up in the city is that you Democrats keep voting for more government, and that means more cops. So I grew up in a small town where I was like the biggest hellion in town in Squint.
Yeah.
We had like 1 or 2 cops. They knew me by name, and when I was out, they caught me doing stuff, they just take me home, or they call my mom.
Well, same thing happened in the 90s.
But I mean, there's no record, there's no,
Yeah.
it doesn't stay with you for life. But for these young black kids, and when I went down to Seattle and was talking to some of these people, it was very enlightening. I talked to one girl who got busted for weed in New York. It's legal here. It ruined her life,
Yep.
But these other black guys are going, yeah, but if you get arrested in the city, that's it. It's a federal case. It's not, oh, we're going to send you home. That's never the case. You're going to jail. And for me, I don't even want to go into my personal experience with this just a few months ago, but to me, it's the cops are a dragnet, and every community has a legal system that basically has a net out to catch people doing the crap that people do.
Right.
And then they
Yeah.
arrest them, and they're stuck in the system. They have to pay thousands of dollars they can't afford. They lose their jobs, they lose their homes, they lose their families.
Yep.
One of the things that I would do is I would change these DWI laws. Because everybody's out drinking, there has to be another way to do this. But to tag somebody with a $5,000 fine and ruin their life,
No.
not let them drive, not let them have a job,
I gotta say
you're
something.
killing them. So
Well, I mean, obviously, since I was a cop for so long, and in the way that I think about stuff, I have a perspective related to the criminal justice system and all that. I did everything that I could do in law enforcement. I was a detective. I did patrol. I worked major cases. SWAT team. So I had all the tactical stuff, and I did it all long enough to be real proficient at all of it. So one thing that I realized through my time is doing it is that it was futile for the most part. That it was law enforcement has turned into a private for-profit business.
Yep.
And so what has occurred that we have this system of prisons, both state and private and federal, right? And And there's a formula to keep those prisons at certain capacity or above capacity at all times. And so what you see is that every part of this world, you mentioned DUIs and domestic violence, it has built its own separate economy associated with it that needs to be fed. And so you have a problem now where the people have decided that they were going to give their own power over to this government authority, right, to go ahead and look out for their specific interests. But the problem is this government authority, which is the justice system now, has created a situation that it's dependent on a certain amount. So it has to make sure to sustain itself, right? So now the people aren't being looked out for any longer. It's only looking out for itself now, right? But now it's all become inefficient and it can't move forward on its own any longer. It's collapsing. So something's going to change related to it. I mean, there's a reason why the United States per capita has more people incarcerated than any other country in the world, right? And that we're the freest society. And you know, the fact is I'd like to bring something else up, which I think is one of the greatest injustices in this country, is related to the Second Amendment and the fact that if you're a convicted felon, that you lose your gun rights. Well, who says that after you've paid your debt to society that you should be punished forever and you should lose your constitutional rights and freedoms guaranteed by God? Because I don't understand that at all. That's a huge injustice that you're plastering on these people, and you're discriminating against them for the rest of their life because they made a mistake, and then when they paid their debt, you don't give them back their rights. They're permanently gone. Right, voting too. I mean, I can see both sides of that, but definitely gun rights. I don't see that is a paramount American right to own firearms, and to be able to have the right to bear those arms and defend yourself. And it shouldn't be arbitrarily taken from anybody, criminal or not. Or if you pay your debt to society, that should be returned. But going back to, you know, this whole situation now, we built this huge beast that has to be fed with this system that looks out for itself. And clearly, you know, my experience in law enforcement, it's a 2 or even 3-tier system where you have different levels for different people, and you're treated differently at each one of those levels depending on your status. You know, and it can go beyond there, because I've witnessed, you know, people like Bill Gates, where he can come into a situation because he owned a lot of property in Mason County. We had a lot of dealings with his estate. I didn't have dealings with him personally, but I know a lot of people I worked with had. And he was the one guy that can go in anywhere without an appointment and just go right in and barge in and just start making demands. And if he doesn't get what he wants, heads roll, right? And that's always the way he was. And I had heard many stories from law enforcement about him, and even in my own agency, that's how the guy is, right? Versus you go down to the tweaker down the street who is deemed not credible and to be subhuman. And he's treated as such. So you have this different level and this discrepancy. And then you have the guys who are the friends of the local politicians, who their kids get to skate on everything, right? So,
all right, well, so let's stop there. And I agree with a lot of the stuff you're saying, but okay, so I live over in Redmond, right?
Yeah.
Bill Gates country, Microsoft country.
Yeah.
And the other day, like a few months ago, I videotaped a tank, like an armored personnel carrier, right?
Yeah.
Attached to the police department. So,
Yeah.
why do they need, and this is pre-coronavirus.
Well, I'll tell you what's...
So why do they need, in Redmond, Washington, which is all Microsoft employees, why do they need a tank? And when we start talking about this, my point is that being ex-military, when I see cops dressed like freaking, you know, Delta Force, why are you dressed like Delta Force? You're a public servant. Are you going into combat? Is somebody shooting at you, or are you just trying to intimidate people? Well, and also, having been, you know, overseas, I would sit in these security briefings, like for private companies, for like Northrop Grumman, and these guys would say how dangerous it is, right? And they'd get you all hyped up, and oh, you can get killed this way and you get killed that way. Well, by the time you actually go out, you're also hyped up. You're gonna just waste the first person that looks at you the wrong way.
Pretty much.
So I think that, you know, when on the law enforcement argument, number one, I do think it's a dragnet, and what you're saying is exactly right. It's for profit. You never see poor people in court. When you go to court, if you're rich, you just send your lawyer. Everybody else in court is poor. But I think that And I'm glad that these people stood up, and they did this just because it's gotten out of hand. The police have become their own military force, and they think I have power of life and death over you. And I know not all cops aren't like that.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm going to explain to you why, when this all has happened, is militarizing the police and creating this situation where we live in this police state, you know, where you're basically trying to change the people's mindset and what is acceptable to them and just move you into a different era. But I'll tell you that the people are the ones who demanded this, and they're the ones who gave up their power and handed it over to this and said, go ahead and do it. And they have, and I'm telling you, your elected officials are the ones that are pushing all this stuff and allowing it to happen. They've militarized the cops. They have connected the cops with the Department of Defense so they can get all this free equipment from them.
Yep.
They can get all these surplus weapons. They can get all these surplus military vehicles, right? And it's all free.
Yeah.
Right, and then they get these grants where they can buy these things called MRATs that are these fucking armored fortresses that can just drive through a concrete building and are bulletproof, right? They cost $200 grand a piece, right? And that's what everybody wants to achieve. They all want one for their SWAT team. You know, these tank-looking things you see, those are free. Those are like old Vietnam, like 80s era stuff that's mostly junk, and they got to maintain them and pay. Everybody wants the Cadillac $250,000 MRAT, you know. If it kept going, it's like it's weird because I lived through that era where, you know, it was just the equipment was free and then militarized. You know, start wearing all black, wear your tactical gear on your outside, plates on the outside. You know, you're in full like, you know, Ramadi outfit, like you're going on a patrol and you're gonna encounter a bunch of jihadists. That's what everybody's dressed like now.
Yeah, right? But why? What? I mean, you're not serving the public. You're ready to waste somebody.
Well, exactly. But they want you to look at them like that because you know what? Now you have a war on police, and who is the one really pushing it? It's your own mayors. It's your own, you know, people in government. It's your own council members in cities that are pushing this war on police, that are putting these people at risks. What you're seeing right now is that the police have created all these alignments and relationships with these people, and now these people have thrown them under the bus. Yeah. There's a reason, right? The cops are being bit by the hand that feeds them right now. And there's a reason for that, and I think it's because it's about money. I think it's about money. Yeah.
Well, it could be about anything, but I agree that, and I started noticing back in the 90s when I was in Alaska, I noticed these guys are dressing like, you know, like I used to dress when, you know, we'd go out on operations and stuff, and it's like, what? Why do you need to dress like that? Are you in combat?
On purpose. It's all on purpose.
But it's psychological anyway.
Yep.
But you know, you've brought up a lot of very interesting points, and I agree with some of them, and some of them I'm gonna kind of hold off judgment on. But I do want to ask you, with the coronavirus, what do you think? I mean, you seem to know a lot more about this than I do as far as Washington State.
Yeah.
What's the story with Jay Inslee and the coronavirus? Can you just tell us what you think or what you know? Or
I don't know anything. All I know is what I see. I mean, I'm seeing what I basically am able to take in from a tactical and an investigator standpoint, and I can look at the movements of the people and what their gestures are and what they look like on their face and what they're talking about, what they're doing and what their choices are, and how those choices reflect the common sense, how they reflect the science. And then I'm looking at DC and the president and what he is saying and what his point of view and what their agenda is, and I'm looking at things like this QAnon movement, and I'm taking other information in from the alternative media, and I'm trying to put a big picture together when I'm looking at that. So I'm looking at these people's moves, I'm looking at what's happening, I'm looking at coronavirus together too, and I'm seeing that, okay, this isn't what we're being told it is. This thing's way hyped up. It seems to be a bioweapon. There seems to be an agenda with it, and these people seem to be engaged in trying to promote and push whatever damage they can cause with it. Right? And that's what I'm seeing.
Okay. So what I've seen is that where I live, I caught these guys the other day installing, they said they're installing some kind of cable.
Yeah.
They were installing the facial recognition software.
Microsoft
right?
facial
Yeah.
recognition technology, yeah.
And
that
so-
wasn't supposed to be implemented.
I know, but so what they did, and this is another lie that the media tells, is they came out the other day and said Microsoft is not going to sell that to any police department. What they didn't tell you is that they've already sold it to Washington State, and they're already installing it. And they've already got the laws and how it's supposed to be used and all that stuff. So that idea that they're not selling it to these police departments
But they want a
is a
police
bunch of
state.
crap, because they're selling it to the U.S. government. It's still getting installed. So anyway, that's another whole issue right there, is the lying media.
Yeah.
All right, so
Well, they're complicit too.
is,
You can tell by the way they report stuff.
okay.
Can you want to tell me an experience? Can I tell you an experience? I just okay. You can edit this, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Should we just stop for a minute so I can tell you something that happened with me and we can talk about it?
no, I'll just cut it out.
Okay, fine. So, I reported in the governor's office to the Department of Justice for abuse of power, unlawful suspension of the Constitution.
Is this Inslee?
Yeah.
Are you sure I can't show this?
No, I want you to show.
Okay,
I was just going to tell you
Yeah.
about. So I reported him. This was like a month ago, probably.
So you reported who?
Jay Inslee.
Okay, good, okay.
For abuse of power, for unlawful suspension of the Constitution, all potential violations for all this contact trace plans and all this other stuff that they were going to do. And so I don't know what happened with any of that. I talked to people. They were going to turn it over to investigators, and I haven't got anything back.
Who did you talk to?
Department of Justice office. It was through the DOJ's coronavirus fraud and abuse hotline.
Okay.
So and they knew who I was talking to right away when I said abuse of power.
Yeah.
They asked, "Oh, are you calling about Jay Inslee?" And they said, "Yeah." How'd you know what state I was calling from? But anyway, so when all this stuff started happening and stuff, and with hydroxychloroquine and all this other stuff, I pay attention to the news and look at the feeds and stuff like that, and Mike Flynn and all this stuff. Our own news, local news, was ignoring all this stuff. They were trying to keep everybody quiet from it. So I contacted all the news media, and first it was when that Officer Anderson came out, related to going against Port of Seattle police, and they fired him. So I called him on that. And this was right then, and said I wanted to report breaking news, because I'm pretty familiar with reporting news to the news stations, because I tried when I was a cop, and they helped suppress all that shit too. So anyways, so I contact these people, and I start talking about Anderson, and they know all about that. Yeah, they've got a story on that. And I say, what about Mike Flynn and all this other stuff? And I start going into connections and all this stuff and common sense stuff. And, we contract with somebody for that, blah, blah, blah. Como was first, and they got nervous when I asked about that, and they weren't going to say it. And then I got to Cairo, the next one. I called them, same scenario, went through it. I'm talking to the guy, start bringing up Mike Flynn, and he's like, we only report local news. We don't do national. And so I got into some other stuff, and then he actually told me, I don't have time for this shit, and hung up on me.
Uh-huh, yeah.
But that was the news people. So that was part of it. But then the other weird thing is I tried to keep calling stations, and I couldn't get through to any of them after that.
Yep.
They blocked me on all of them.
Yep.
So they're all connected to each other.
Yeah. So you know that, what is it? It's Sinclair Media owns ABC. They own King 5. They own all
So that's how
the-
they can block me from calling any of their stations.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
I
only
could
ones
call,
they
but
don't
they
own
wouldn't
is
talk.
Cairo.
Yeah.
But they own every radio station. They own every TV station in
Interesting.
Seattle and the whole Northwest market.
So how do you get fair news out of that?
You don't.
Yeah.
But what they do is they just play Fox News against the Republicans against the Democrats, Macy's against Gimbals.
Pretty much.
All right. So, well, let's. I don't want to keep you all day, Rich, but
Whatever.
I have a couple more questions I want to ask you. And okay, so this, as far as the coronavirus and Gates, because Washington State is the epicenter, and I will tell you why.
It shouldn't be.
Cuomo, the mass murderer Cuomo, and he sent all those people into the nursing homes
Yes.
that had the coronavirus and mass murdered all those people.
Well, not even just that. In the hospitals, they were putting people that had suffered strokes and stuff that
Yeah.
were recovering next to people that knowingly
Yeah.
had coronavirus
So,
and infected them.
When this broke out, and you can check my
Wouldn't that be
videos.
criminal conspiracy?
When you check my videos, you can see my mother went to her doctor in Everett,
Yeah.
and she was complaining of like a cold or something. you got to go to the hospital. And where did they send her? Now, she has, I mean, she's got 5 kids with dozens of grandkids,
Yeah.
right? So they sent her where? Right to that hospital where that guy was.
Try to
first
infect
guy,
her.
the first guy that was in Washington State with the coronavirus.
So is that not
They
another
sent
example of
my
a criminal
mom.
conspiracy?
Yeah.
I mean, how many examples do we got to show between when we can kind of say in good confidence, yeah, we think there's something going on. These people are complicit.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
And anyway, I did a video on it.
Yeah.
My brother was just livid. I think he called that doctor and gave him a piece of his mind, but
But who's that doctor
but
taking orders
why
from? No
would
doctor
you-
would do that in their right mind.
Yeah.
Unless somebody's telling them to do
right.
it.
So that's another question for the doctor. Why did you even send her there? Anyway,
Yep.
so Inslee, his daughter works for Gates, or his daughter works
His
for
wife's
the,
Planned Parenthood.
okay, and Planned Parenthood
He's got all the connections.
Okay, so really then, this is connected to Planned Parenthood, it's connected to Microsoft, it's connected to a vaccine, it's connected to Fauci, and so all of this stuff just basically comes out of Washington
I
State.
think all these people end up in jail.
And my question is, how can Jay Inslee keep doing, I mean, I have a joke, and I hope it doesn't turn out to be true, but it is that the scientists have discovered the shortest span of time that goes even shorter than the nanosecond. And that is Jay Inslee's life expectancy after we vote him out of office.
Well, maybe. But here's the thing,
So,
right?
But my point is, why is he doing all this stuff? Because he knows that he's going to be, I mean, he's going to be a target.
Well,
He's
maybe-
ruined so many lives, and so many of those people, one of them is going to be desperate.
But did you ever think about
So-
this? That maybe that this plan that's in place and whatever we're at the end result of, and whatever this is a bigger plan. Maybe these are the kind of plans that are implemented over 50-year periods of time, and not just over short election cycles and whatnot. Maybe he's part of a bigger picture and a bigger plan.
Well, my point is, do you think they're going to try to scrap the election? And let me just...
I don't see how we can have it now. I think something's going to happen between now and then that's going to either postpone it, or some other event's going to occur. Something is going to happen significant that makes it so likely we can't have an election because it's not going to be able to happen fairly or legally. And I just see that forthcoming. That there's no way. Everything's going to escalate between now and then. Things are going to get hotter and worse, and people are going to be at people's throats worse. Next thing that comes is another shutdown for phase,
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to let things recover. They're going to keep doing damage.
Yeah.
So they're going to keep pushing this to a point where you're going to have a big explosion of things happen where they want chaos, they want war, they want people killing each other.
Yeah.
They want division,
Yeah.
right? That's what they want. They want everything fucked up so they can try to commit fraud to win. Because that's all they got. Because I got a feeling with everything that we know now at this point that they're looking at nooses when this is done. It's not that they're going to jail.
Exactly.
If the government doesn't get them, the people will.
Yeah.
It's over.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Yeah. So in the end, I mean, we've talked about a lot of stuff here, but in the end, you think that the deep state, the Clintons, I guess there's no more Epsteins, the Kerrys, the Schiffs, that, and all the people in the FBI and CIA that have been doing these operations, whatever, you think this is just, they're using the American public as human shields
Yes,
to
right
protect
now.
themselves?
I think ultimately it comes out of this. I think FBI, CIA disbanded. I think you're going to see massive amounts of politicians in cuffs or arrested, all the way down to the state level. And you're going to see some sheriffs. I think you're going to see local city council members, because what you're going to find out is that there's going to be a huge connection to all this human trafficking and all this other shit. And there's a lot of paid off people or a lot of engaged people that are people of title and power that are part of it. Because this is, you got to realize, the child trafficking thing is a huge part of this whole thing that's been going on, and that's what Trump has been shutting down. The reason why that it's something that we didn't know about as a society, we got missing kids in this country, like to the tens of thousands, 100,000s a year, right? Other parts of the world, like 8 million a year go missing.
Yeah.
They don't find them. You know why they don't find them and why nobody's really looking too hard? Because those are going to these elite rich people, and they do bad things to these kids.
Okay. All right.
We can leave it at that.
Yeah. Let's leave it at that because this is a family podcast.
Well, we're not going to talk about the things they do.
So, Rich, all right. So let's kind of wrap this up here. So, you're done with law enforcement completely?
I'm done. Never again will I ever engage in that.
Unless I hire you for security.
I would do a private security for the right price.
Okay. All right. We'll have to look into that. Okay. So, this is kind of a off-the-cuff question, as if any of my other ones weren't. But so, Rich, tell me what you think. Your knowledge of Bigfoot is Bigfoot. Well, actually, let me ask you this before I even ask you that. Do you think that Bigfoot has a connection to UFOs?
I'm not sure, but I think.
And do
likely.
you think we could expect that Bigfoot, that with the disclosure of UFO stuff, that they'll eventually come around and if there's a tie and say, yeah, there's...
Oh yeah, no, I think it definitely, regardless if it is connected or not, it's coming out at the same time. It's eventually going to come out with it.
Okay.
They can't not, because it's just, there's too much out there, there's too many witnesses.
Okay.
It's eventually, they can't keep it a secret forever. They're going to have to come out. And then, you know, there's a lot of people that make money off Bigfoot, and they're probably not looking forward to that.
Exactly. That's always been my thing, is that...
I
then
could
the
count
gravy
quite a few
train's
people on a couple of hands that probably wouldn't really want that to happen.
Yeah.
But who knows?
All right. So here's your last question, Rich, and then you can go back to your life. Is Bigfoot a Republican, a Democrat, or independent?
Independent.
And why do you say that?
Because I don't think that they align with anybody, probably.
Is that right? They're
Other
just
than
out there.
themselves.
Yeah.
They're looking out for their own survival and interests.
Yep. Kind of like yours truly.
They don't have an agenda. Yep.
Kind of like yours truly. Mm-hmm. Well, Rich, I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with us. You know, I actually tried to get Melba Ketchum to kind of join us somehow, but the answer is always no.
No, it's okay.
But Rich, I have to thank you. A year of Encounters USA, you're the one that really turned me on to Melba, to the Politics issue, to everything I pretty much knew about Bigfoot and that whole question, especially in the Olympics. You really got me going on Encounters USA, so I'll always be eternally grateful to you.
Well, thanks for letting me be on your show.
Yep. Well, I appreciate it. So, Rich Germeau, again, thanks for your time. Thanks for sitting down in this lovely environment to do this interview. So, take care. And now I'm going to have to tell everybody, do you want to say it or do you want me to?
Oh, you can say it.
All right. All right, everybody. Well, this is Matthew Heines, and I'm running for Congress in the 1st Congressional District in Washington State. I'm sitting with ex-Deputy Sheriff Rich Germeau, and we're talking about Bigfoot, we're talking about the government, and we're talking about what's going to happen in the future. So, if you are anywhere out in the woods like we are, or if you are suffering from an oppressive government, or if you're in downtown Seattle, or you work for a police department somewhere, or you're an African American, remember what I always say, always watch your back.
My name is Matthew Heines. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran of the 82nd Airborne. I took the oath, and I'm here to defend my state.
Congressman Susan DelBene has been in office since 2012. Using her substantial financial resources, thanks to Microsoft, and her $84 million fortune, she has been able to continually maintain an office where people still have little idea what she's done. Well, she's learned to dance around, and she's learned to do all the political maneuvers you have to do to keep getting reelected. Well, Susan DelBene, it's time for you to go.
My name is Matthew Heines. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran of the 82nd Airborne. I took the oath, and I'm here to defend my state.